Do you like taking communion? My family and I always look forward to it, and we always try to use it as a time to remember how much Jesus loves us. Today, we are going to talk about the first communion. The Bible tells us about what is called the Last Supper. It was a Passover time, a big, important celebration for God's people, and the disciples wanted to know. They wanted to know where Jesus planned to celebrate. Every year, Passover was a very special time when people would celebrate and eat together. He told them to go into the city and find a man that would be carrying a jar of water, of all things, and follow him, and he would show them the room where they could get everything ready. Sure enough, they found it, all set up, just like he had said. And that was where they ate their meal together. When he had prayed, he took the bread and broke it and said, "Take this, this is my body." He took the cup and said, "This is my blood." Jesus knew he was about to go to the cross. He had been teaching his disciples for a long time. He needed to give them one last lesson. But he didn't teach them with a pencil or a paper or a whiteboard or even a computer like what your teachers have been trying to use this week to teach you. He taught them with a meal. Jesus taught them their lesson with a celebration meal that God had been using to teach his people for thousands of years. When Jesus sat down with his disciples that night, he didn't call it the Last Supper. He called it the Passover. The Passover celebrated the time when God freed his people. The Egyptians made God's people slaves. God used Moses and Aaron to tell Pharaoh to let his people go. And when Pharaoh wouldn't do it, God sent plagues. God knew that once Pharaoh finally let them go, they would have to hurry. So he told them to use bread without yeast so that it would cook faster. And he made them make lots of other preparations. They were freed. And every year after that, he told them to have a big celebration called the Passover. Here are some of the traditional elements of the Passover plate. I had to kind of improvise some of them. But anyway, there would normally be a bone. My bone is made of paper, but that's okay. There would normally be a lamb shank bone and an egg, and these both symbolize sacrifice. There would also be bitter herbs, and these would symbolize the bitterness of slavery. There would also be haroset, which was a paste made with apples and honey and nuts, and that symbolized the mortar that the Egyptians had the slaves use to make all of the buildings when they were enslaved. And there would also be something called karpas. It's a green leafy vegetable that symbolized how when they first went to Egypt, everything was going great. And of course, the most important symbol of all was the unleavened bread. God told his people to celebrate every year, partially because he wanted his people to remember that he had taken care of them in the past, so that when more trouble happened, they would remember his love and care and trust him to take care of them again in the future. Jesus celebrated the Passover with his disciples, and together they remembered God's love and care. And then Jesus taught them a new lesson. He told them that he was going to show God's love and care in a whole new way by giving up his life. Here are the symbols that you know so well today. The wine that was always served at the Passover meal would now remind them how much he was willing to give up to show his love. The bread would remind them that he would care for them no matter how much it would hurt him to do so. This week has been very different for some of you. It has probably been hard some days to learn new lessons that your teachers want to teach you. It might be scary for some of you to watch the news or to be worried about when things will go back to normal. So today, let's remember the Passover and how God has used it for thousands of years to teach us that he loves and cares for us, even when we are worried and scared. Also, even though we can't take communion together right now, let's remember how much Jesus loves us and that he was willing to die to save us and to show us that love. Jesus was facing the hardest moment of his life, and he took time to stop and celebrate with his disciples. They celebrated with a big meal all together. We can't really do that right now, but we can still find ways to celebrate and to remind ourselves of God's love. So even though you can't have a big celebration meal with a whole bunch of people, maybe you can find a way to make the meals in your immediate family very special. Maybe you can set the table a special way or eat outside like we are today. Maybe you can help your mom make a special meal and help clean up. Miss Mary also has all the supplies that you need to finish your Sunday school lesson at home. She made a wonderful sheet, just like last week's sheet, a wonderful big sheet on communion, and she'll also have a craft for us. We're puzzling through new territory this week, so you'll be making your own picture puzzle of the Last Supper or of Passover. I don't have the example to show you today, but I am sure that your parents can find a picture online if you need help thinking about what the Last Supper looked like or what Passover looked like. Also, have your parents send Miss Mary pictures just like last week, and she'll post them again. You can brighten the day of someone in the church or in the community by doing this. And don't forget, let's celebrate and trust God together.